This isn't the usual video I would make, but it's becoming a huge problem recently and with every other character, and it's not to do with Raiden specifically, but the community more so. There's been a lot of controversy about the character. Is she good? Is she bad? Well, nobody knows except everyone apparently. It hasn't even been a week yet, and another drama with another character has already begun. Drama with how she performs, much like every other character release. Child, Ganyu, Kaguya, just to name a few when release, has many criticisms prior and after release, and yet they are amazing characters. The community jumps the gun and instantly decides that the first impression of the character is the final impression of the character, and once after a few weeks or months pass by when the character has been properly evaluated, people move on as if there wasn't a raging echo chamber they had started, just to continue and shit on the latest newer characters. It makes the Genshin community very toxic, so I want to talk into some issues that I have with the community. One of them is damage fixation. How much does this character do? How much does this other character do? One is higher than the others, meaning that the other character is trash. And yet many characters are known for their damage, such as Sucrose and Zhongli. They all have their own roles, and yet whenever a new character comes out, people go back and just look at the damage they deal and define them as a character. Raiden does less damage than Ganyu, instantly trash, who cares what else she does. It's similar to how people were comparing Jiangli auto attack to Dongli auto attacks, and we know that those two characters don't auto attack much, if at all, while using them, and yet people are willing to nitpick something like that, and have a huge controversy of how bad Dongli is since his attacks were similar or worse than the 4 stars, and people ignore his shield capabilities in CC. We need to evaluate Raiden and the other parts of her kit before rioting when it hasn't even been a week yet. Another thing I see is people just asking for pain buffs, regardless of if it's not even hitting their player base, such as comments asking to buff Raiden because she's weak, and even if she's not weak, everyone who thinks she's strong gets a buff as well, making a win-win scenario, right? Well, that does make sense, only for people who have Raiden, but what about power creep? People who don't like Raiden or don't want her will now feel like the older characters are weaker, or Raiden may be a necessity to have as a unit. Just look at Dongli and how he trivializes the game. People don't want to be forced to use Dongli to clear content, just like people don't like to be forced to use Raiden to clear content as well. And the more power creep we ask for in the game just because our favorite character isn't OP, also it makes older characters less relevant. And as the game goes on, newer and newer characters get stronger and stronger, and OP is defined differently. And since the community wants all their fair characters or new characters to be OP and have no faults, it diminishes all the past characters, making the characters that were once OP irrelevant, meaning no players get what they want and making Genshin unfun to play. If you browse communities, you have probably heard of something like a Ganyu check, Dongli check, Bendy check. You know what I mean when people talk about older characters being irrelevant, and wanting her to be OP will get another situation such as Raiden check, and no one wants to be forced to play a certain way to clear content, especially the Aspiria biz when premium gems are on the line. Also the other side, she is OP and has no faults, when we haven't even gotten to evaluate her yet, and yet some people are willing to say she's the strongest character in the game for whatever clickbait reason it is. Both sides have issues and there needs to be middle ground to evaluate the character, and not just be two sides black and white and when it should be more grey, especially since we don't have enough time to know if she's good or not. And the one calling her OP on release is also just as bad as the one calling her weak on release, because then it's just jumping into first impression and sticking with it, because people hate being wrong, rather than leaving with first impression as just a first impression. Because when you try to defend a character, you get called a white knight, and when you call a character weak, you get called a meta slave. When things get criticized or discussed, people rather call names than try to have a discussion. And then we also have people arguing about their Archon status. Only 7 characters can be OP, so it's not that bad. It doesn't make sense she's weak because in the lore she's strong, and should be on Dongli and Venti level. Doesn't matter if they are an Archon, Harbinger, average vision user, or whatever they are. Why an arbitrary number of characters to be strong just because they are strong in the lore? Should we scale the characters from 1 to 10 and place them depending on how strong they are in the lore, and purposely make them weak since in lore they wouldn't be as strong? Once again, it makes characters irrelevant just for the sake of wanting some power fantasy, and this doesn't allow other characters to shine just because of lore reasons. A lot of people's favorite characters aren't Archons and wouldn't be viable just for the sake of lore reasons, because in Genshin, there are much more characters than the 7 Archons. Once the shift phase is over, Raiden will be overlooked in a few weeks or months time, once a new weapon comes out, and if it isn't a perfect character, or reaches the expectation, it's going to be the same old shit again, without the community learning anything. And after shitting on that newer character, people will forget about the new character anyways, and move on to the next favorite character every other month, just because of the flavor of the month. All in all, I just want to say the community should take the time, because who knows what the middle will be.